U.S. fiscal debt to reach $140 trillion by 2050. Oh dear. Is the Fed trapped? Hello, this is Chart GPT today. Well, we had the big meeting in Jackson Hole last week, and the Fed has spoken out. But many people are kind of questioning whether or not they really are just jawboning or actually telling us where they're heading. At least in the short term, I guess we believe the markets are believing it, but not much. But Powell basically said, he kind of sums it up by saying we have a long way to go in terms of raising rates to stop inflation. So that's what he says. Of course, there's some key points here. A couple key things, or you can read those on your own, but basically he's suggesting that we have a long way to go. The inflation rate remains too high. He talks about housing inflation, needs to calm that down. He says that basically unemployment is not that bad. So he's got a long way to go. He sees, trying to get interest rates down from the 3 to 4 down to 2%. So this is what his goal is. Whether he can achieve that, it remains to be seen. Now here's a chart where rates are at. Here's the mortgage, the fixed rate versus the 10-year Treasury. And they've been coming up here in the last year pretty sharply. One does have to wonder if we hit a resistance point. These markets don't go all in one direction. Mortgage rates are getting close to that 7.5, even approaching 8. But long term, if you look at rates, they've been in a steady downturn. And in order for these rates to really start going up in a significant way, we're going to have to hit a recession of some type. And I suspect they won't want to do that. So I've still been predicting that a pivot is nigh. I think the Fed is trapped. They cannot raise rates much higher than they are, or else they're going to cause significant damage to the economy if they haven't already. These things take a while to filter through. Say, well, they raise the rates today, but doesn't mean that in 6 to 18 months that it doesn't have the knock-on effect. It's kind of interesting that they're trying to reduce the balance sheet, and they have to somewhat. But they rose them so much through the COVID. This is global, and you can see they're all pretty much acting in unison, right? So, but to bring that down, they bring it back down the trend line. So the trend is still there. It's still elevated. So even though they've done a lot of work, the central banks have done a lot of work, it's certainly nowhere near what they need to do. So they got a long way to go in terms of raising rates and reducing their balance sheets, if at all. So that's a very shocking number there. Of course, here's the real kicker here. This is the percent of payments, interest payments as a percent of revenue, and this is the government. And you can see that, we were floating around 13-14%, spiked a little bit in COVID, but now we're off the charts again, off to 20%. Those are significant numbers, almost doubling. And of course, that means we're up to like 1.2 trillion in government interest payments, which is unsustainable. Now here's a chart that should scare you. This is at the current rate, the debt load. Just the debt load is going to rise to 32 trillion, from 32 trillion as it is today to over 140 trillion by 2050. So that's obviously a shocking amount. Will that actually happen? I suspect something serious in the economy will happen before that, but who knows? It'll mean huge inflation numbers coming. Currently, it's the balance sheet will swell to more than over 40 trillion. So this means more inflation is to come, unless we go into a severe recession or even depression. So this is where we're heading. You've probably seen charts before, but once you get up over 90 to 100% GDP to public debt, that tends to be problems for our economy. It tends to be net negative in the spending. Take a look at the AI on some comments on that, and take our online poll. Do you think the Fed is trapped? Do you think they can raise rates much higher, or will they have to buckle under the pressure and reduce rates soon to save the economy from going off a cliff? Yeah, you can check the post links in the description box for those polling and more of those comments. Don't forget to subscribe.